You have to be quiet. They're quite close. You can just about see them through the trees. Can you hear them as well? They were arguing before, but I think they've started to calm down. Sometimes you can see a blue light burning and flickering through the trees. That's a sign of magic for sure. It emanates from them when they get angry. They're the ones I came here to find tonight. We call them Deildegasts. People have been spotting these two now and then for years, and always in the same place. Just last week, two young girls went looking for a missing sheep in these woods. They both came running back into town, scared almost out of their wits. They said they had seen a large woman and a smaller man in the woods, surrounded by blue smoke and dressed in old-fashioned clothing. They yelled at the girls and tried to chase them into the marshes, where they could easily have drowned. The woman, I think I know who she is. She was said to be mean when she was alive, and mean people make mean ghosts, in my experience. The man I know next to nothing about. But no matter how scary they might seem, I think they just want some help. To be set free, and that's what I'm going to do tonight. Or try, at least. Although I do not think the woman deserves it, if what I have heard of her is true. It's nice to have a bit of backup, so I'm glad you decided to tag along. If something goes wrong, you can distract them while I run away. Just kidding. It's simply a bit safer not to face them alone. We'll go down together in a little while when they are calm, and we've had the chance to observe them for a little bit. Since you're relatively new at this job, I suppose I should explain a little. A Deildegast is the ghost of someone who moved a stone marking the border between properties. Stealing land from your neighbour is considered a serious crime. The north is mountainous, and little enough of our land can be cultivated. Steal some of it from your neighbor, and it means more food for you and less for him. And if he has little enough already and many mouths to feed, you could eventually have lives on your conscience. Moving borderstones is a form of stealing that just goes on, maybe for generations, until it is made right again, until the borderstone is back where it was originally placed down, even if no one remembers exactly where that is anymore. The Deildegasts must remember, though, we will not be able to find the exact place unless they show us the way. That's why we had to come here at night, when they are out and about. I suppose I can tell you a bit about the woman while we wait, about who I believe her to be anyway. I think she is the ghost of a very wealthy woman who lived in these parts about 60 years ago. Her name was Brynhild Armandsdottir, and people still remember her, but not fondly. She lived in the Eastern Valley and owned no less than 9 farms there. She was a widow and had outlived 2 husbands and 3 sons. That's why she had inherited so much land. But it is said that she was greedy and never felt she had enough. She decided she wanted to take some of her neighbor's land. They were not rich like her and had little to lose. The border between her neighbor's Mossridge farm and one of hers, Oak Falls, went straight through the middle of a field. From old, as far back as anyone could recall, the owners of the 2 farms had worked the field together and shared its produce equally. Now Brynhild wanted it all to herself, and she told people that the field had always belonged to Oak Falls, and it was shared with the Mossridges out of her good graces only, and not by any legal right. She asked an old servant of hers to throw away the borderstone. He took it far into the woods and left it there, and she paid him with a barrel of flour for his troubles. When the borderstone could not be found, people bent to Brynhild's authority, and the field was sowed and reaped by her men alone from that day on. And now, both she and her servant are Deildegasts, screaming and yelling in the woods at night, trying to lug the stone with them, but it always falls out of their hands and rolls back to where it was thrown away. A few years ago, the Mossridges' half of the field was restored to them with the help of an old legal document in the capital's archives confirming the ownership. I believe it was a local civil servant, a friend of the Mossridges, that went there on their behalf and dug it up. He was offered what little money they had, but refused it. All he wanted was a bit of food for the journey. With the document as proof, the Mossridges won back their land. But Brynhild and her servant are still here, never able to rest, because the borderstone itself has not been put back where it belongs. Their sin has not been diminished, as they had no part in it when the civil servant, for some food for the road, righted the wrong that Brynhild's servant did for a barrel of flour. It is the same for all Deildegasts, at least all the ones that I have encountered. They are doomed to wander the place where the borderstone is. If it was thrown into water, as it sometimes is, the Deildegast will sink down to it. They can lift it up to the surface, for as long as it is submerged, it is quite light. But as soon as it breaches the surface, it will be too heavy for the Deildegast, and it will sink down again. If the stone is on solid ground, as in this case, the Deildegast will sometimes be able to lift it, but before they can move it, it will slip out of their grasp. Whenever they manage to move the stone a little, they will laugh, an ugly, wild, cold laugh. And when it slips from their hands, which it inevitably does, they will cry out in anger and frustration. Hearing a Deildegast will often strike fear into the listener. Lone Deildegasts I have dealt with before. Most of them are friendly enough when they realize you are there to help. I have not encountered two at once before. That's why I wanted your company tonight. A colleague of mine told me of a very unusual case where the Deildegast had a large company with it. And it was a horrible sight, he said. No one dared to approach them. They argued loudly and yelled at each other. Sometimes they would fight. Some of them carried burning steel rods. Some rode black horses with red eyes and sparks coming from their nostrils. Apparently, many of them were men of the law, lawyers and judges, and several brothers and other relatives of the one who had moved the borderstone. They had received bribes, given false testimonies in court, and judged unfairly. They were all in on it, in one way or another, and they were all turned into Deildegasts. They made such a ruckus, my colleague said, that a nearby road was moved further away, so people could travel safely after nightfall without hearing or seeing them. They're probably still there. I don't think anyone will have the courage to deal with them. So, it could have been worse, you know. I think we can deal with those two down there, right? I'm not sure they deserve help, but it will make these woods a bit safer for others. They seem quite calm at the moment. I think this is a good time. Come on, let's go down there, nice and slow, and set them free.